You just made a really good point, and I want to go back to that. The current narrative and how, it plays into the minds of the next generation.
Yeah, so I was just telling you like the story um of I mean, I don't know where all this is going, so I don't know how much you want me to like name drop, but like global leaders who influence like global finances, like you can look at what they believe, you can look at where they want to take things. It's not secret. It's not like hard to find. You just have to look. Um, but like they're like the thing I told you was like there's a phrase in those places called "you will own nothing and you will be happy." And the mindset of that is like, it may be depending on how you hear that sounds sinister or whatever. But really, the thought process behind that is like ownership is very, it takes a lot of responsibility and it
Hmm.
takes a lot of money. So if you own your home and something happens to it, like you're responsible for doing that. If you're a renter and something happens to your home, your landlord's responsible for it. If you own a car and it needs maintenance, you have to take care of that. If you rent a car and it needs maintenance, like, you just rent a different car. Like, the
Yeah.
people who own it take care of it. And so it's like this spirit, this mentality, this narrative of your life would be better if you don't own anything. If you're not the one with the responsibility. Um, so really, at the moment, the most important thing you could do is hold down a job, is buy a car, is like work towards home ownership. And I'm not saying those things are easy because like the the world is working against you to encourage you not to do that. So of course there's hyperinflation. Of course there is a radical debasement of fiat currency. Of course the housing market is more expensive than it ever has been. Um, Cars are more expensive than they ever have been. Like, it's the world is not trying to help you achieve ownership. The world is trying to help you achieve serfdom. Um, and so, like, as you are looking towards this, like, that is that is the spirit, that is the narrative, that is the force you are bumping up against. Is we don't want you to own anything, so we are going to make it hard for you to own anything. And so it really is the most rebellious thing to like actually go get a job and grind hard and uh, own a car and own a business and own a house and buy some land. Like that is like the rebellious thing right now because that is against all the narrative that's pushing. Um, but it's also like I get why it feels like hopeless and defeating to look at that because even in my life like I've experienced this where the first house that I purchased today, if I were to purchase that same house, is over $100,000 more expensive.
Yeah.
Like, and that's in my lifetime. Like, that's in the past like 15 years. Um, and so, like, I totally understand why generations who are just stepping into these things are feeling lost, are feeling hopeless. Because I experienced that feeling as well. Like I
Hmm.
sold my last house 3 years ago, and that same house is already like I don't know, like 25 to $50,000 more than it was then, which puts it out of what I can afford. Like the house I already owned, I can no longer afford.
Hmm.
And so I totally understand why there is a like, this is hopeless. But it's also why, like, you have to really be pushing against that,
Mhm.
like that mentality, push
Mhm.
against that force. And that, like pushing against that, like will be uncomfortable, will be hard. You will have to sacrifice to do that. You will have to work a job you don't like. You will have to like not feel like you have free time. You will have to you know, like really push against that. And maybe there's sacrifices, like maybe you can't afford a house on your own, so you like get a house with roommates. Like maybe you can't afford a car right away, but like where can you start? Like where in this can you start and like start pushing against that narrative?
Yeah, Josh, that's so good because when I think about what you're saying and when I think about sacrifices and whatnot, and some of the, because I'm in a different generation than you are, but when I think about some of the sacrifices that I've gone through and listening to and hearing some of the sacrifices that you've had to go through, I mean, comparatively speaking, we're here in the Western world, and we think about some of the sacrifices that of the people in Israel or the people in Asia, or, when you think about what's going on with Pakistan and India right now, and the sacrifices that people have to make there. I mean, it's a whole different world. And so going back to some of what you just said and thinking about when you made the comment about it's rebellious to think about
Mm-hmm.
owning, and I'm like, oh, hold on. Okay, so me coming from a background of faith, and subscribing to the Bible and the Torah, and it talks about how we're supposed to occupy and multiply. Well, to do
Mm-hmm.
that, you have to own, right? You have to own some land. You have to own some, because when you do those sorts of things, it brings personal development. And when you have to go through sacrifices, it's going to increase your authority and and on and on and on. I mean, we're supposed to be creating. We're supposed to be co-creating. And just like right now with what you and I are doing, we're co-creating together. We're creating with Yahweh, but we're also creating with each other. And that there's a blessing that lands upon that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just so interesting.
It's this thought process of like you recognize, like the reason a lot of people don't want to move forward in that is because they recognize how hard it really is going to
Yeah.
be. Um and I was telling you, like right before we started recording, like it's not that employment has never been abused. Like
Mhm.
it's not that like the system has never like been like not against you. Like the system's always been against you. Like especially ever since most global economies started using like debt-based systems. Like you use debt to get a car, you use debt to get a house, you use debt to start a business. And eventually that enslaves you because you can't quit your job because you are tied to these bills. Like, you take out a mortgage to get a house and a car, and then you have three kids, and then all of a sudden, like, you can't quit because you now have to support these people, and the only way you can do that is by like working this job that maybe you don't like. um and so I'm not saying that hasn't ever been abused, um but it's like you got to look at what has been encouraged. Like money, like lending money has been cheap for a long time.
Mhm.
And so it encourages you to want to borrow more money because it's cheap money. Um, and it's it's like this, you have to recognize what the narrative is and what is being like, where are you being encouraged to go, and can you see that, and can you use that to your advantage to fight against going a direction you don't want to go. Like right now, the narrative that we talked about is not owning anything. So it's harder to own a car, it's harder to own a house, it's harder to own a business, it's harder to own land than it ever has been in the past 100 years. Um, so what can you do that helps like push against that? Well, can you um like I don't know, like the first thing that came to mind is like right now what's really popular in some places is um like car rentals for people who don't own a car, and like Uber is a good example. Like, you don't have to own a car because I can just Uber places. In some places they have like Waymos that are just like AI driven cars. And like you don't even have to do anything. So like what can you do to position yourself in systems where you own things that you're lending to other people? Because if that's the direction the narrative is going, then how can you position yourself to like be in that but
Mm-hmm.
not be a part of it?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
we're doing this thing with uh cryptocurrency,
Mm-hmm.
and part of that is because the world is pushing towards digital economies and digital finances. And
Yeah.
so we're positioning ourselves to capture the flow that is going that direction, so that we don't have to be enslaved by that system.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. That's and it's interesting that you bring up, being enslaved by the system because that, going back to my faith and you think about the Israelites and that's what drove them to Egypt, the
Mm-hmm.
Mitzrayim, the bondage. There was a famine in the land and they went to where the famine wasn't, but then they got enslaved and then it became an unjust tax. And I mean, and the thing is how do you act with integrity in a corrupt system,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I think that that's where strategy comes from heaven to weave in and out, to be in the world, but not of the world, and but how to utilize your gifting in the world, all the while trying to help people get an understanding of the narrative to change their mind
Yeah.
and change their ways.
Yeah. I mean, even just thinking about like what you were talking about, like the Israelites in Egypt, like um, it's not too dissimilar to some of the lives we live. Like they had homes, they had religious freedoms. Um, like if you just read the story, like they were in their homes worshiping their God. Like, but yet, how were they enslaved? They were enslaved by a system that they didn't have freedom to leave from, which can be very similar to like the debt-based economies we have. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
and I know a lot of people like there is also this like narrative within a lot of churches for like uh never having any debt. um and I get that, and there probably are times in life where that is the most important thing you could do. But also like there is something about being able to leverage something to build something greater. And um so it's not just a I don't know, I think one thing you have to do is you have to be able to view these systems um as largely neutral.
Mm,
um and it's the way the system is used, or who's using the system. Like is the person using the system have a corrupt mentality, and
hmm.
so they corrupt the system,
Hmm.
or does the system itself corrupt? And so like there is um I think you have to be able to sometimes see both sides of this and be able to not unrighteously judge a system,
Mhm.
Because if you do, you're not going to be able to be in that system because you've judged it.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, back when I was in corporate, it was a challenge sometimes to see some of the things that I saw, and especially from my position being in HR, and HR supposedly supposed to be like a type of a righteous judge, right? Don't let HR in the room. We don't want to hear what they have to say. I mean, that happens a lot. Don't tell HR. Or like if you got to go to HR, it's like, oh, I got to go to the principal's office, sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But I mean, that's common. That's a common thing. But when you're you're in that position and out in business and you're seeing this, you really have to think through what is my position here? What is my strategy here? And how can I help be like Solomon and use the wisdom to help influence um, balance and fairness and dividing the baby, right? And so it's quite the challenge because you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but you also don't want to continue to go down this path of bringing or agreeing with or aligning with a corrupt system on behalf of the people. So you're
Mm-hmm.
in this place of always having to like try to understand how heaven sees this and how can me as a conduit in the earth in my position help bring balance. I mean, okay, I'm talking about being in business, but guess what? It happens in the church too.
Mm-hmm.
It's because you have people everywhere and you got to like constantly be
Yeah.
thinking about being a righteous judge.
Well, and like you're talking about like having influence and being able to judge these things, you can't do that if you don't have authority to be there, and you can't have authority to be there if you're not participating in that system. Um,
Wow,
so
that's
you
good.
can't change the business world. You can't change the way employment's done if you don't step into employment or step into business ownership. Um, we at the recently like we're got to listen to the Kingdom Initiatives like talk about like helping employees like achieve their dreams.
Yeah.
Well, that's different. That's a different way to do business.
Yes.
But if you don't have the business, you can't do that. If you're not an employee, you can't
Right.
find an owner who helps you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it is this like you have to be able to judge the system righteously, but you also have to be able to be in the system in order to really judge it. You
Yes.
can't judge something that you don't have any like interaction with.
Well, and yeah, and there's a specific example of that is that there's a person that I've talked to that they're a Christian, they proclaim to be a Christian, and they work in an abortion clinic. Talk about some serious persecution that they would get from their fellow Christians.
Mm-hmm.
How dare you support that by working there? Well, the answer is because it's such a dark place and these people are hurting, and I need to help be a light in that dark place. Wow. Somebody throw that person an offering quick because think about the hardness that has to come with going to work in an environment, like that because there's so many different, opinions on pro-life, pro-choice. And if you got to bring balance in that system, like there's some times where it's dependent upon the mother's life. That has to happen. Now, the percentages, maybe, whatever, that's a whole nother deal. But wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know that I would personally ever choose something that difficult.
No, I
But
think this person has grace for it,
yeah,
though.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly. And, but, I know the area that I am called to is the financial arena.
Exactly.
And I can also tell you that I've studied in depth the financial industry, and it's not much better. It's maybe not as overtly
Right.
um
Right.
like overtly obvious, um but it has been used since the beginning of time
Yeah.
to control, manipulate, steal, cheat.
Right.
Like that just is how the financial system has functioned. But that doesn't mean that there doesn't need to be a way of exchanging value between people.
That's true.
And
Yes.
it doesn't mean that it can't be done righteously. Um, I think this might be a controversial opinion,
Oh, this will
but
be good.
I, the Bible talks about all people being created equal, but it also tells stories of people being given different air quotes talents,
Mhm.
and depending on what you're doing with that, they're grown or they're taken away. And so, like in the financial world, there's something called intrinsic value and extrinsic value. So,
Yeah.
intrinsic value is just the value that is who you are. And I think from a human level, everyone has like is created with the same intrinsic value. But your extrinsic value is something that you can change and grow, and like it can fluctuate by what you do. The Bible talks about how you will always have the poor with you. Well,
Mhm.
that kind of sounds weird if we're all created equal.
Mhm.
But that must clearly mean that no matter what happens, there will be people who choose to say yes and people who choose to say no.
Yeah.
Um, Also, we talk about like being like Jesus is our king, he's our Lord, we're in the kingdom of God. The kingdom is like the ultimate depiction of hierarchy.
Yeah.
Like it does not get more hierarchy than a
Right.
kingdom.
Right.
It is not a socialist economy where everyone is equal and has the same thing. And
Mhm.
so, like, uh, I guess like sometimes my heart breaks for the church in the financial industry because they there's like this, somehow there's a narrative that we are all supposed to have the same things and everyone should be treated equally, and just because you are alive, all like everything should be taken care of for you. um and yet the story in the Bible is like the good stewards, the ones who takes care of the wealth, the one who has a field and leaves the corners of it for the people who don't have
Yeah.
anything. But you can't do that if you don't have the field.
Exactly.
How do you get the field? You get the
Yeah.
field by like going out and grinding. You
Yeah.
get the field by working hard to get the field and steward the field and tend the field. And
Yeah.
um like I know you and I have talked about this, but um there's like the concept of work life balance. And a lot of people look at work life balance as like almost a daily measurement or maybe a weekly measurement. Like, okay, I gave my 5 days at work. Now
Right.
leave
Yeah.
me a loan for the other 2 days. And I heard somebody say one time, it's not your 9 to 5 that's keeping you from your dream, it's your 5 to 9. Um, and they're like basically the thought was just like it's like we use, oh, I have to work as my excuse for not pursuing what we're passionate about, but really what's chewing away our ability to pursue what we're passionate about is what we do with the rest of our time.
Hmm.
And
Mm,
so when you're measuring work life balance, maybe you shouldn't look at it in a weekly time frame. Maybe you should look at it in a yearly time frame. Maybe you should look at it in a decade time frame. Maybe you should look at it in a lifetime time frame, because
ooh,
maybe when you are 20 and you aren't married and you don't have a house and you don't have kids, maybe you should be working two jobs. Like
mhm,
maybe you should be grinding so that when you are 40 and you have kids and you have a house, you have more freedom.
mhm,
Like maybe you should take the minimum wage job and work hard so that you can become a manager, so that you can become like whatever it is. And like those things are possible, but those things are hard. And not everyone is willing to say yes to the hard thing.
yeah, 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 for sure. And you have to pay attention to, um, you have to pay attention to how you flow. Like I can catch myself getting caught up in like, oh my gosh, when was the last time I got up to refill my water? You
Mhm.
know, and you have to pay attention to those things. And it's just the same thing during the week. I mean, like there's a reason why there was a weekly Shabbat, if you will, a weekly rest time, woven in. And then there, the different feasts going back to, my faith and my lineage. There's the feasts that come into play, and it was for celebration. It was a time because, you work 6 days and you rest one. Okay, so with that, if you subscribe to that, then you get into this rhythm and this cycle of working, resting, working, and even, warring, if you will, on some things, but then you celebrate your wins, which should create this healthy cadence in your life. And but there is a grind. And then when you're married and when you have kids, or you're in that process, you have to, like, co-labor with your spouse in, like, okay, this is our family's vision. This is where we want to go. Is what we're being asked of now, this meeting that we just came out of, does this fit into our vision and what we've agreed upon? And then, from there, if it does, then great. If it doesn't, then gosh, I'm sorry, I'm not sure that we're the right family to be asking that of, or whatever. And but taking that and looking at the overall family vision and moving towards creating a thing, and then in what God has asked of you, what you believe that God has asked of you to create in the earth. Is that your assignment? And so this is where, there, needs some work, I think, done for us in Christendom to really go back to the basics 101, write the vision down and make it plain, and then work towards that. And so,
Mhm.
because you're good at a thing that I'm not good at. There's a thing that, I do that you probably would prefer. You're like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that. I don't want to do
Yeah.
that, Rose. But we trade resources, right? We trade resources in that, and that's the economy of the kingdom. That's the economy of heaven, to where you guys do what you're good at, we will do what we're good at, but then yet we can trade resources and create this economy of the kingdom. And
Got
so
it.
then it's just a matter of, helping some others that maybe are still learning to understand how they're supposed to contribute.
Yeah.
And but there's a portion of that gleaning from the field that you've created, from the field that I've created. There is a portion of that gleaning that comes, but also I think that there comes a time where they start to learn more about what they're to contribute and how they can contribute.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think like like if I was going to leave people with anything, it's just like I want to help you figure out, and I know Rose wants to help you figure out like what your dream is, what you're passionate about, and help you step into that. But it may not be step one. Like step one might be uh cleaning a toilet. Like step one might be a janitorial job. Step
Yeah,
one might be
absolutely.
uh a like landscaping job. Step one might be whatever it is. Like your vocation does not have to take away from your dream. And in fact, many times it can be the like it can be what helps launch you into that. It can be what keeps you from it, sure. Um, but it's like it takes intentionality. Like
Mhm,
it takes a focus on your dream,
mhm.
and then you can see everything you do as the steps to get there.
Yeah, that's so good. Josh, that makes me think about, a phrase that I say regularly, serve another man's vision and I'll take care of you. That was a word that was spoken to me during a time in my life where I was really seeking serve, of the Lord. And he kept saying to me, serve another man's vision and I'll take care of you. And with that came opportunities as I focused and positioned my heart to serve those that I lead, then serving my peers, and then serving those that lead me. It was
Mm.
interesting how that happened. And because the opportunities just became greater and greater for me because I was willing to serve. And with that, we've talked about this, but with that, it increased my treasury. And I have, and in my treasury, I have some amazing, amazing resources. And part of those resources are people. God's greatest asset are his people, because out of people come things like drilling for oil, knowing how to pull the oil up out of the ground, or how to create, I mean, just all kinds of things. And so in my treasury, there are some amazing people. Now, I'm not just going to hand over my treasury just to anybody
Yeah,
because
you have to guard your assets. Guard like
you
you
do.
wouldn't just hand your money to anyone. You don't just hand your people to anyone.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I watch for people that are willing to serve, that have the humility to serve and that can honor people that have gone before them and how they're, really utilizing that. So, yeah, so that's where I would leave. That's where I would leave this conversation is, what's in your treasury and what are you honoring? And how are you serving? I think that there's a lot of information about there about leadership training and this and that, but we really need some training on fellowship,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
it's following can be scary because it looks like you're not in control. But I have a secret for you. You've never been in control and
You're
you never
different,
will be in control.
right? Ah.
um, and that's terrifying. And
Yes.
so like anything like putting yourself in a position of following where it makes it feel um like where it emphasizes that feeling that already exists just makes it harder.
Yeah. Yeah. And boy, it'll stir up some rebellion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
So, anyway, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking this time with me. And, Josh, you're a very wise man. Very
Thank you.
wise in your young years. So, congratulations. And I honor you for all that you do. And you know what, Josh? You serve well. So, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.